Hello there, everyone. I'm Gaylen Morse, and welcome to Journey to Recovery. We appreciate having you along today. This podcast is entitled Relapse Prevention Success. On today's program, we'll take an in-depth look at specific strategies to prevent relapse. We'll present various ways to stay focused, strengthen your resolve, and sustain your recovery program. Our podcast focuses on the co-occurring disorders of mental health and substance abuse. Our host is Dr. Hal Baumchen, a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed alcohol and drug counselor. He's an author, speaker, and clinician with over 30 years of counseling experience. I'm here today with Tim Bode, Operations Director at Northland Counseling Services, and with Dr. Hal Baumchen, our host at Journey to Recovery. Hey, guys.
Hello, Gaylen. Hi, Dr. Hal.
Hey, Tim. Today we're talking about co-occurring disorders, that's substance abuse and mental health. And in my world, because I'm involved in treatment, I think that treatment has two primary goals. The first one is to reduce symptoms. And when we're talking about co-occurring disorders, we want to reduce symptoms in substance abuse and in mental health at the same time. So they both have to be going down.
And then the second goal is to prevent relapse. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. So those two primary goals: reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, bipolar illness, the mania, the ADHD, and prevent relapse. So prevent the reoccurrence of the substance use and the reoccurrence of the mental health problem.
So what is a relapse?
Yeah, it's nice how people argue about this. You wouldn't think they would bother with it, but of course they do. And so if you slip and have a couple of drinks one night, that's often not determined to be a relapse. I like using it as a slip. You didn't intend to do that, kind of almost immediate regret after you do that. Get back on your program. A relapse for me is like giving up on your recovery program and full on again, living in the drug and alcohol lifestyle, almost with no intention of working your recovery program. That's a relapse.
I'm sure there are a number of things a person can do to keep the recovery program strong, aren't there?
Yeah, a number of things that you should do, and we're going to talk about those, and a bunch of things you should not do in order to keep your recovery program strong. And I thought it'd be helpful today if we discuss those things that really would add to your recovery program and keep your recovery strong and going well. There's so many books and tapes and podcasts, I'm sure, that tell you what not to do. So let's talk about what we can do.
So we may mention some of those negative things, but we're really going to focus on the positive, right?
And those positive things that we're going to focus on, Tim, maybe if you're out there, you can kind of rate them in yourself from maybe a 1 to 5 scale. So 1 is I don't do that at all, and 5, I'm pretty happy about that. So these positive things you could do, take a look at yourself. Are you doing those? And the way we're thinking about this, Gaylen and Tim, is if you do those things, you're strengthening your recovery. And if you don't do those things, your recovery is probably getting weaker. So I'm not going to do any of them, but I'm going to have a strong recovery. Well, that's probably not going to happen. So you're going to have to do the things you know to do in order to keep your recovery going.
And am I right that they're usually not like all or nothing?
Right.
So you don't have to do the whole list all the time, right?
That's right. And you don't have to do each one at a 5. So, hey, I'm doing this one. I feel pretty good about it. It's a 3 or 4. And to your point, you're doing a bunch of them. That's going to help you. You're not doing any? Well, take a look at that.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Do many of your clients struggle with relapse or become obsessive or chronic relapsers?
I think so, Gaylen. We get people in the treatment programs that have been through other treatment programs 3, 4, 5 more times. And so, yeah, they're struggling with relapse. I like thinking of this whole thing as a great big wall between you and long-term recovery, but every time you go into a program, or every time, even when you go to jail or talk to your probation officer or talk to a pastor or get a counselor or do some outpatient work or read a self-help book or listen to a podcast, every one of those is a blow against that wall that separates you from your long-term recovery. And one day, with one more hammer blow, maybe it's today, you break through that wall, the wall comes crumbling down, and you live out that long-term recovery you have always hoped for. So these things are important. Even if you said, yeah, I'm kind of a relapser, let's do these things that we're talking about today, and that'll strengthen your recovery program.
How about someone saying to themselves, I have kept short accounts with other people? Is that important? Does that help someone's recovery?
I think so. And, again, Hal wasn't going to talk about the opposite, but the opposite there would be, I'm angry, bitter, and resentful, and I hold on to resentments and bitternesses. So we don't want to do that. We want to keep short accounts with people, let those things go, overlook them, and work them down.
Yeah, so as we go through some of these things now, our goal is to take a fierce inventory of our attitude, our character traits, our actions, right?
A lot of problems with addictions or substance use disorders is there's a lot of denial and a lot of minimization. And so, we want to take a fierce moral inventory here, make a rock solid commitment to our recovery program.
Mm-hmm. So how about this one, being kind, patient, and understanding?
You've heard me talk about this as character development that we're always after instead of just behavior change. So that's a good place to start. Ask yourself, are you kind and compassionate and patient?
Yeah.
I hear you saying be more focused on your character than on performance or appearance.
Right, yeah. I'm good looking, but that's only going to go so far. I think you better shoot for character, Hal. Exactly.
So how about, think about, have you been telling the truth to everyone? Where would you rate yourself on that?
That's great because, again, with denial in substance use, you also have minimization and just straight up lying to somebody. So covering your tracks, making excuses for yourself. We really want to stick to the truth.
And everyone here includes yourself, telling the truth to yourself, right?
Right, yeah. That denial thing, like, no, I'm admitting where I'm having trouble.
Yeah.
Probably not making excuses for behavior.
Yeah, taking responsibility, not making excuses.
Mm-hmm. And then think about making amends with other people as that's appropriate.
Right. I think, did Gaylen bring that up already? Keeping short accounts. Yeah.
Short accounts.
Yeah.
Kind of fit together.
Right.
How about taking medications as prescribed? I'll bet that's pretty important.
Oftentimes what's helpful is medications and counseling working together are better than either one alone. But the way that medications work is you have to take them regularly as prescribed. And a lot of our clients, maybe they want to play doctor here a little bit, and they go off the medication because it wasn't working. They go off the medication because it was working and I don't need it anymore. They go off the medication because I didn't like the side effects. I go off the medication because somebody in my life said, you don't need to be on a medication. Medications are bad for you, man. And so there are a lot of reasons to get off, but probably the best rule of thumb here is to, if the doctor prescribed the medication, let the doctor take you off of it. Mm-hmm. So talk to your doctor about it and stay on your medications. That's going to help your recovery.
Yeah. So again, we're talking through some things that will help people in their recovery and encouraging our listeners to kind of rate themselves on these things. Where do you fall on a 1 to 5 scale? So another one is, I think, and ties in well with medication, is keeping your counseling appointments as they're scheduled.
Same kind of thing, yeah. So somebody looking over your recovery program and holding you accountable is going to be very helpful. Don't blow those appointments off.
Yeah. Here's one maybe people don't think about, but have you been getting enough sleep?
With our methamphetamine substance users, they stay up for 5 days in a row. It's a terrible kind of thing. But even when you're off the drug, you need to get a good amount of sleep on a regular schedule. I read an interesting thing the other day, Tim, that people who stay up late at night, it really costs them in terms of health and even how long they live. Can you believe that? So it can be disastrous to go to bed at 4 a.m. And I think maybe they end up shorting themselves on sleep. Mm-hmm.
How about keeping your temper well managed, keeping your cool?
Yep. Instead of being chronically frustrated, angry, irritated, and upset, you keep your cool, because those kinds of anger things that I just mentioned drive people away, and we need people in our recovery program to sustain it.
Yeah, so work on your frustration tolerance. We've talked about that before, right?
Right, let it go, work it down. You live in Minnesota. You know, you're going to get a snowstorm in April and you're going to have mosquitoes by May. That's just unfair. But that's the way it is. Get used to it.
I think they'll be here a little earlier than that.
I was at a ball game one time and it started to snow. It was an April game. It's just a really light snow. It didn't affect the game. It's kind of a drizzling snow. And what was funny about it, in the lights in the evening at the ball game, the snow was coming down. I saw a bug going up. And only in Minnesota can you see that combination at a baseball game.
So for those who are in recovery from alcohol and drug use, it's important to evaluate how you're doing at staying clean and sober, right? Abstaining from alcohol and drugs.
Without lying to yourself and minimizing and giving yourself those exceptions and excuses. Yep. I never drink, except I'm going to drink at the wedding. Oh, be careful there. So yeah, do an evaluation and be open and honest about that.
Right.
How about being physically active, having a regular exercise program?
Yep, so all these things you guys are bringing up, they're all designed to kind of sustain your recovery program, and physical exercise is one of those. People feel good about it when they're doing that. Their self-esteem goes up, their activity level goes up, they're hanging out with positive people, doing positive things. So exercise is really important. I was going to say it's key, but I can go ahead and say that. It's key to your recovery. Stay active.
Mm-hmm.
How about attending meetings according to your recovery plan? I know there are things you need to get to.
It's easy to attend meetings when you're in a program and all the guys are going to a meeting that night, or you're living in a sober house and all the women and all the are going to the meeting, and that's easy. But it's when you're out there in the real world and you have these commitments and responsibilities for yourself, and they're creeping back in, and now you got to run the kids to hockey, and you've got to pay the bills and go to the job and get some sleep and go exercise. We just told you to do that, and I can't get to a meeting. So it's hard to keep all of that balance. We're acknowledging that, but we still encourage you, like, don't blow off the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
How about mood? Has your mood been good, not elevated or depressed? Either way?
Right, yeah. So it was stay on the road. Either ditch is going to be destructive. So yeah, well, manage your mood. And when it gets out of balance, go get help.
Yeah, and then related to that, I think your mood and attitude. So have a positive, optimistic attitude. How are you doing with that? And how are you feeling about your progress? Are you feeling good about your progress? You know, not too cocky about it, and also not too pessimistic.
Right. Yeah. You're right in the middle, doing, staying pretty positive. You know, but not too positive where maybe you're in a manic episode or something. Right?
Yeah. Right. And then, how are you doing? How are you doing with working your program? Are you being intentional about working your program? All those things that are involved with that.
Don't you feel like sometimes people are kind of random and haphazard? They're not very intentional. They're not very goal oriented. But that will help your recovery. Set up some recovery goals, and then plan your work and stick to your plan. Mm-hmm. Work your plan.
Mm-hmm. Are you motivated? Are you motivated
and
to
stay motivated? Find ways to stay motivated, and look at that. Your chief reason for doing the hard work of recovery, which is I want to raise my own kids. So I don't want somebody else raising my children, or I want my mom to be proud of me. She's been embarrassed of me, and I want her to be proud of me. So find your chief reason for doing the hard work. Keep that forefront and stay motivated.
Mm-hmm.
How about being a peacemaker instead of being argumentative or divisive?
I don't know why you're bringing that up. What are you talking about? I'm not that way. Why are you always picking on me, Gaylen? Yeah, so that's important. Be a peacemaker. Work down problems. Overlook offenses. Yeah.
How are you doing on follow-through on the things that you should be doing, your duties, your responsibilities, any assignments that you have from your program?
You know how I write these long lists for people to, give them ideas about things, and there's an item that I've written about a couple of different times where I have intentions, good intentions, but poor follow-through. And a lot of people relate to that. Mm-hmm. So can you get your follow-through to stay true to your word? do what you said you were going to do.
Something we talked about in last week's program, recognizing, refuting, and replacing negative thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because those negative thoughts are often right around the corner, automatic negative thoughts. Here they come again. So I want to recognize that, kick it to the side, believe the truth, and keep moving forward.
How about being a solid example for other people in the program?
People are watching you, aren't they? It's unfortunate, but that's true. And they're looking at your behavior because they're worried about you. And when you're doing well, you're an example to other people in the program, too. So go ahead and talk about successes that you're having. You don't have to just talk about your failures.
Right. So again, a reminder, we're talking through some inventory items that we encourage our listeners to think about that will help you in your recovery and following through on things.
And go ahead and cultivate good, solid support. Get around good people that support your progress, support your recovery. Hang out with them. And you might have to eliminate or reduce people that drag you down.
Talking about responsibilities and following through on those, sometimes people have legal requirements that they have to follow through on, dealing with probation. Those are all important things.
Do you remember when we talked about procrastination? Calling your probation officer or sorting out some legal papers or going through that paperwork you got sent or getting somebody to sign off on something. That's a pain. But we need to take care of those things. So don't procrastinate. Do those things. Stick to your legal requirements because it doesn't seem severe. Nobody's chasing you down the next day, but the consequences can be very painful.
Right.
How about staying satisfied with your spiritual life, with relationship with your higher power?
That's great, yeah. It is important for me, but it's hard for me to talk about that. But I want you to find a connection with God or a higher power, and then work that part of your program as well. And that working that spiritual dynamic's going to help your recovery.
How are you doing on making financial decisions? Are you using your money wisely?
Yeah.
That's important, right?
Right, yeah. Or are you continually buying your way out of trouble and back into trouble? So, yeah, use your money wisely. And so many people have trouble with that maybe you need some help, somebody to hold you accountable or just help you through the process.
How about time? How are you using your time? Are you structuring your time, using your time wisely?
I was just wondering how we're doing today with our time.
Well, I intended to start my timer, but I forgot.
Great.
We're about 18 minutes.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. We were just laughing about how we were using our time here on the program. But using your time wisely is back to being intentional about how you're working your program rather than being haphazard or random. So, be intentional and use your time wisely. Don't spend endless amounts of time watching TV, playing on your phone, playing computer games. Set your goals and stick to your goals.
How about being honest or making an honest appraisal of the harm that you've done because of substance abuse?
We have a long list that we use in the treatment program of about 90 consequences that go along with active addiction lifestyle. And people, it's painful to look at all the harm that I've caused to other people. But it is an important part of working a recovery program is to take an honest look at that and then try to make amends for the damage that you've caused. At least be willing to do that. Sometimes it's impossible. I understand that. You've burnt that down so bad that it cannot be restored and they're not going to talk to you or they're gone or they're dead or something. I get that, but be willing to make amends when appropriate.
How about taking good care of yourself, including things like personal hygiene?
When people are depressed or super anxious, they often, and using substances, by the way, they quit sleeping, they quit taking care of themselves. They don't buy good food, they don't eat well, and they don't sleep well, and they don't clean themselves or clean their property very well. So all of those things I think are important.
Yeah, so we've been going through this inventory of things to evaluate yourself on or rate yourself on. So think about, now that we've talked about a bunch of these things, maybe you've thought about some of these things, what areas do you feel like you're pleased with, you're doing well with?
What areas would you like to modify?
Right. Yeah. Maybe you can identify both of those. So go ahead, give yourself some credit for all the things where you are following through. So this was not meant to be an exercise where we point out all your mistakes and find fault with you, but rather help you know what the target is. Hey, these things I could work in my life and are really going to help. So we want to encourage everybody to work through this list and maybe listen to this a couple of times. Find those things where you can make some progress, and maybe add a couple of them to the list where you're going to do a little better job at being intentional and following through. And we wish you well on your recovery.
Well, thanks for listening to today's podcast entitled Relapse Prevention Success. You can download other materials that help you develop skills to identify emotional problems, reduce symptoms, and prevent relapse at journeytorecovery.com. We've been visiting with Dr. Hal Baumchen, a licensed clinical psychologist and licensed alcohol and drug counselor. His expertise and clinical wisdom is now available at journeytorecovery.com. Share this resource with your peers and colleagues. I'm Gaylen Morse. Thanks for listening to today's program. See you next time on Journey to Recovery. Remember, recovery is a journey. Enjoy the ride.